Today I have Mr. Kirk Chisholm with us. He is the wealth manager and principal at Innovative Advisory Group. Not only that, he also has his own podcast, Money Tree Podcast. Kirk I found him because this man is all over the World Wide Web. He's done several media appearances, has grown his financial firm, and is very comfortable at what he does. Kirk, thanks for joining me, friend. So tell us a little bit about your story, the Cliff Notes version thereof, of kind of, your background, how you kind of got started into this, and what, what kind of propelled you into becoming a wealth advisor.
In college, I graduated in '99 from college, and in college, of course, it was that the tech boom where everyone was interested. Even in college, I was in my dorm room trading stocks, trying to be successful, and well, everyone was doing it, right? You just put on CNBC and everyone's making money. You just throw darts at a board and it was easy, right? It's rising tide raises all boats. I think
did they have mad money back then?
After I graduated, but they, CNBC was a very different place back then. It was probably closer to real news than you've seen since. But it was great.
Sure.
Enjoyed it. Made some money, lost some money. Definitely learned a lot of lessons, and decided I really wanted to get into this field. So I had a few internships. Some were better than others, but as an intern, you don't learn too much, but you get a feel for the job. And I remember once I was at one of the wirehouses and talking to one of the old timers, and I was like, "So what do you think?" He's like, "Oh, they're going to eat our lunch, the discount brokers, they're going to take all our business." He's like, "I'm getting out of here, I'm retiring." And I'm thinking like, well, I don't want to get in this business. This is terrible. And then had an internship with another guy over the summer, and it was great. I was cold calling all summer, which, I call character building. And I really enjoyed it. It was a challenge. Right. It was fun, even though it was painful. And I decided this is what I want to do. So got into the field right out of college, started at Paine Webber, back when they were Paine Webber. And, I was dialing for dollars. I didn't have connections, just out of college. And like I said, I was cold calling for a living. And it was hard. It was hard work. Most people didn't succeed. Out of, our kind of freshman class that started, only a handful of people survived. It really took a lot of grit. And honestly, if I had to start again doing that, I wouldn't do it. It was hard. I'm glad I did it, but I wouldn't do it again. It's times have changed, but back then it was the internet existed, but people weren't really on it like they are now. So, got started there. I was there for a few years. I got acquired by UBS. I went over to Smith Barney, decided, hey, maybe this will be different. It wasn't, and decided to go out my own. So I went to an independent broker-dealer and Royal Alliance, and it was good. It was a good setup. Being independent was great. It allowed me to be a hybrid, so I could work at a broker and have the RIA element. And oddly enough, I wasn't familiar with the RIA element because they never teach you that in the wirehouses. They never tell you about this channel actually exists because they don't want you to go there. So when I went to Royal Alliance, it was good. Right. It was a good experience. But then I realized there were some things I wanted to do that I just couldn't do at a broker-dealer, any broker-dealer. And so I met my current business partner, and we really wanted to do something different. One of the hardest things as an advisor is differentiating yourselves. And, when you're talking to clients, you're just like everybody else. There is no difference. And you might think you're different. You might think you're Warren Buffett. You might think you're smarter or better. But the reality is the client's never going to see that. You could be Warren Buffett and the client will never know. Because how are you going to communicate that to them? Oh, I'm Warren Buffett? Great. Who's he? Right? Clients just, they cannot. Think of it this way. I mean, people in our field are kind of unique. We feel like people are just going to be blown away by our knowledge. Oh, we're so smart. Look at us. We're really smart. Does a doctor say that? Nope. Does an accountant? Does an attorney? No. They never walk around telling people how great they are, how smart they are. They're just smart because they got their designation, their degree, their license, whatever. They have that. And you just go to them and you say, hey, you're pretty smart because you have this profession designation, right? But in our profession, anybody could do it. You just have to pass the test, and all of a sudden you're selling stocks. You could be a gas station attendant, call yourself a financial advisor. So, there's some really smart people, and there's probably some people, well, I know there's some people who really aren't that smart in our industry, but we're always feeling like we need to tell people how great we are. If you go to a doctor, he doesn't say, "Hey, look at all the great degrees on the back of my wall over here. Look at I went to Stanford. I must be really smart. You need to work with me." They don't do that, right? But our industry does. So, what I realized is I needed to differentiate myself. It was getting harder and harder to do that in our industry. There was a time where you could, but it just got harder and harder. So we started the firm. We started an independent RIA, so we're not affiliated with a broker-dealer. And our thought was we're going to specialize in alternative assets held in retirement accounts. Some people call them self-directed IRAs. So if you want to buy a piece of rental property or a horse in your IRA, you can do that. And so we specialize in that area, and we're probably the only advisors in the country that specialize in this area. There are like 4 others that do it, but they don't want to do it. Clients will bring them stuff and they'll do it, but they want nothing to do with it because it's hard. It requires a specialization, knowledge, infrastructure that is not easily scalable. But we have our little niche, and it's helped us grow our firm significantly. And, we can kind of, there's a lot more we can talk about, but I think that's a good start.
Sure. Well, let's back up a second. So when did you strike out on your own?
Broker-dealer was around
completely independent.
2006.
Okay. So not terribly long ago, and when you and your partner got together, one of the first things you guys decided is that we have to differentiate ourselves. And this is something I see quite a bit with a lot of the financial advisors I work with. A lot of them are truly different. Unfortunately, it's just like you say, they drown themselves in the alphabet soup of designations, and there's a world of difference between several of them. And a lot of them, it looks like they feel like if they just have enough letters there, they don't have to do the hard work of being unique or different, or at least explaining that to people. And that's generally a rub quite a bit, even though what financial advisors do can be somewhat commoditized, but so many of them do things differently. They don't do it like you do. They don't explain why they're different. So kind of give us an idea of how did you guys decide to niche in the way of, the alternative assets, or really, first of all, tell me what a self-directed RIA is, and then tell me why you guys went down that road, and then how you communicate that to your potential clients.
Because that's really important. I think a lot of people go out there and they think a designation is going to get them more clients. Don't waste your time. If you want to get a designation for the knowledge because you're going to be smarter and you're going to do a better job, do it. I fully support that. I think everybody should be smarter every single day. Do whatever you can to be a better advisor and a better professional. But if you think that's going to get you business, you're deluding yourself. Let me give you an example. Take the CFP is a bad example because they advertise on TV everywhere. But I will guarantee you, if you go up to a random person on the street and say, "What is a CFP?" they're going to not have any idea. There might be some people who know, but generally speaking, clients have absolutely no idea what those designations mean. You might feel smart, you might be smart. And like I said, I applaud people who are getting more knowledgeable. I think that is an aspirational goal. But if you're using that for prospecting, you're wasting your time because clients don't know what that means. If an attorney told me he had an MBA JD, there was a time where I was like, I don't know what the heck that is. I just happen to have a lot of attorney friends who explained it, but I don't know what a JD is. What does that mean to me? Does that mean that you're specializing in something? So my point is the alphabet soup it's only for knowledge purposes. If you have 10 designations after your name, just drop them because clients don't know. They don't understand. I've only had, in all my times of cold calling, and I probably called 100,000 people over the years, not only one person, when I first started out, said, "Do you have a designation? Because if you don't, I will not work with you." One person said that in my entire career. And, probably if somebody I don't want to work with, or maybe he was an advisor who's just, toying with me when I was cold calling him. Who knows? No, he just refused.
That person didn't even become a client.
It has to be a designation. And I said, "Well, why?" He's like, "Well, because it's really important." He didn't have an answer. Like, basically, he couldn't give me an answer. It was just somebody told him that. So anyway, getting back to your question of niching down. So when we started our firm, Innovative Advisory Group, the goal was, this is back before the housing crash. I saw a lot of opportunities in real estate, and I don't mean the bubble-ish. I mean like buying discounted properties after the sell-off, because we had some inkling that things were going to get a little rocky. And so we wanted to be prepared so we could buy property at a discount after a sell-off. And we couldn't do that at a broker-dealer. They wouldn't allow it. It's not a security, so they wanted nothing to do with it. So we started an RIA, a Registered Investment Advisor, so that we could provide unbiased advice. We're not restricted. We could buy stocks, bonds, and mutual funds for clients. We could buy real estate, horses, gold, crypto, minor league basketball teams. Doesn't matter. There's no restrictions for us like there are with broker-dealers. So, we still have to qualify it. I mean, our standards are higher than the broker-dealers. So if we screw up, it's on us because we're fiduciaries. But I'm happy to take that burden because I'm out there looking to do what's in the best interest of the client. I'm not just trying to put them up with a mutual fund portfolio like everybody else. And how are you going to, the one funny thing is, in my career when I was, prior to this differentiation point, I was always talking to clients and I was like, oh, great, look at this prospective portfolio, just like everyone else, right? And my prospective portfolio hopefully was better than the other advisor who's doing the same thing. That's not differentiating you. You're selling performance. And if you do that, I did that a few times in my career and they end up being bad clients because I oversold what I could do. It was just like, it ended up being just a bad client. So I just stopped doing that because you're wasting your time. But niching down, so the self-directed IRA, the niche, if you think about niches this way, there are a handful of ways to look at niches. One way is demographics, right? I'm going to work with, men 50 to 60 years old within a 20-mile radius of my house, right? That is a niche. Okay. Another niche would be maybe more specific. Like I'll work with McDonald's franchise owners within the state of Massachusetts. That's also a niche, right? Similar. But then you can also look at it from other ways. You can look at it from a product perspective. Like I'm going to specialize in self-directed IRAs. That I would deem as a product, right? Even it's not a product, but you have to put it in that bucket. Or I specialize in opportunity zones. One of those big area that's come to play in the last few years. You're going to be an expert in that, and that's going to be your niche. You're going to specialize in marketing that quote-unquote product. It doesn't have to be a specific company. As a fiduciary, I'm not pitching products, but I can understand the product better than anybody else. So if I'm talking to an attorney and he says, "Oh, I've got a lot of clients who are selling their real estate and they're just, complaining to me about taxes," great. Let's set up conversations because I know this product better than anybody else. And so that's another area. You could specialize in products. You can specialize in services or let's say parts of the code, right? So self-directed IRAs also falls in that. It's a part of the tax code that people don't understand. So when I was at Smith Barney, I had a client who wanted to invest in a private business with his IRA or 401k at the time. And I said, "You can't do that." He's like, no, actually you can. And he explained it, sent me all of the documentation. This is when Google literally just went public, so people weren't really using Google to the same extent they are. So it's hard to find information on the internet. But I looked through it and I said, "Oh, this is really cool." Talked to a few companies that provided services. Then I talked to my manager. I said, "Hey, this guy's got $500,000. He wants to do this. Can we do it for him?" He's like, "No, you can't do that." I said, No, you can do it. Look." He's like, No, you can't do that. "Yes, it can be done. You can't do it." I said, "Oh, okay, now I understand." So, the broker-dealers, there's no incentive for them to do that because they're not making their extra commissions, plus they have to do due diligence, and it's just not worth it for them. So I get it, and that's part of the reason we went RIA, because the broker-dealers just aren't going to handle that. So that's another example of, whether it's a tax strategy or a planning strategy, or there's so many different niches that if you get too small in your niche, then you're not going to have enough potential clients. But if you get too big, then you're just noise.
Sure.
You're just like everybody else. Oh, really? You live in my neighborhood? Great. I'm definitely not going to work with you because there's another guy in the neighborhood too who does this. So you get to a point where you're too big. So you have to find this happy medium where it's big enough, where there's enough opportunity for you, but not too big where every Tom, Dick, and Harry is out there competing with you.
So you guys have a very specific niche. How are you promoting that, educating it to not just your clients, your potential clients? How do they know
the way we look at
that this exists and why to come to you?
Is, there's multiple steps in marketing. The first one is you have to figure out who your avatar is. So for self-directed IRAs, there's a certain avatar, right? There's a certain type of person who is going to do that, right? It's not everybody. There's 6% of the public have alternative assets in their retirement accounts. I would say less than 10% is even aware this is a possibility, right? So you think about the tax code. You don't go to bed reading the tax code trying to figure out like what it all says. There's a ton of pieces in the tax code that you can take advantage of that, I mean, I've been doing this for 23 years. I'm just learning about new pieces in the tax code this year that are really cool that I can provide clients. You can't know it all, right? It's just not possible. So think of the, let's use the McDonald's franchise owner as an example, right? So your avatar is, we'll call him Steve, right? Steve is a male. He is 45 to 65 years old. He makes, $500,000 a year. His net worth is $5 million. He's got 2.5 kids. He's the coach of his kids' baseball team. Like, sit down and think through this hypothetical Steve and name him and come up with exactly what this person is like. What's their political leanings? What do they read? What shows do they watch? Are they on Facebook? Are they on Twitter? Like, you need to know this person inside and out. So when we did the self-directed IRA research, we created our own avatar. And this person, this hypothetical person, there are 3 that really focus on self-directed IRAs. And, this person has certain political leanings. They're of a certain age, a certain gender. We're not stereotyping. This is just who comes to us. Like, these are people, like, over the years, we've realized, like, these are exactly the type of people who are reading it because these are people who are proactively calling us and saying, hey, we need help. So over time and through research, we realized who this type of person is, where they are, and how to contact them, or where to be in front of them so they contact us. So we do a lot of multifaceted marketing, but as an example of how not to waste your time, let's say, I want this self-directed IRA investor and I spend 90% of my time on Twitter. But let's say none of these people are on Twitter. What am I doing? I don't care if Twitter is the best marketing tool since sliced bread. If they're not there, I'm wasting my time. So, a lot of people will pick up some sort of strategy like, oh, I'm going to do webinars, or I'm going to do steak dinners, or I'm going to do Facebook ads. Exactly. Like, great, that works. Does it work for your audience?
Syndrome.
Does it work for your avatar? And I would argue that most people don't spend the time doing the avatar research because it's hard and because they just think it's so simplistic that they'll figure it out. I can tell you that it starts there and it goes, each single step it will affect not only who your audience is, but how you communicate with them, how you address their needs, because after a while you get to know what their needs are. I don't need this person to explain to me where they read about self-directed IRAs because there's only like a handful of places. Newsletters, they found it online, there was a webinar. There's certain places they hang out. I already know where they're coming from. So if they say things to me, immediately it clicks like this person read a newsletter and that's how they heard about me. So I need to, in the back of my mind, know this person has read something. I know exactly not exactly, but I know generally how it's being framed by a newsletter because they're all kind of the same and they all take the same tact. So I don't need to think about like, oh, well, how is this person thinking about my situation? I can go right into it and address some of their needs right away so that I'm not flailing around spending a lot of time, figuring these people out. They tend to follow a template, this avatar type of person. Every person's unique. You have to treat them that way. But you at least know a framework of how they're thinking about it so that you can address those needs up front so that they're not wasting time and you're not wasting time.
So with your specific avatar, after you started doing the research, and by research, it sounds like you already had a good idea, and I assume most wealth advisors might, if you know, theirs is, and a lot of the niches I see are folks who are going to retire, which is not a niche, or sometimes it's pre-retirees, which semi is, but once people start nailing that down, they have some sense of where these folks are, where they hang out. For you specifically, once you knew that it was going to be people that were self-directed IRA junkies and they were doing that research, what specifically do you guys do to reach out to that group, knowing that this might not translate to what everybody else does, but what is working for you?
We've done SEO for a long time. I spent a ton of time up front doing SEO, and that continues to pay dividends for us. You know, the way I've kind of looked at marketing is there is no one single approach. You have to do the throw it at the wall and see what sticks approach sometimes. And I also kind of think of it like a snowball. So SEO is a good example. So you put in SEO, like I committed to doing one blog post a week. That's what I committed to at the beginning. Okay, we did all our website. I wrote everything. So I think having your own voice is really important if you're writing. You can't outsource that as much as painful as it is. And I hate writing, but you can't outsource it. So I wrote it all. I committed to one blog post a week. I am a terrible writer. I hate it, but I did it. I thought this is the strategy we need to use, and I need to do it. So I took a lot of time, 20% of my time to do that. Now, that you'd think like, oh, I write a blog post and the whole world's going to find me. No, it took 9 to 12 months to really start getting traction. You know, I would say 9 months before I get any traction, and 12 months before I started to get, you know, traction that was like, okay, this is working. So I was doing 52 blog posts before I started to get traction. Most people give up after 3 months, say this doesn't work. Well, it does work if you're committed, but you need to set the stage up front for what you're willing to commit to. If you're not willing to commit to it, don't do it. It's a lot of work, and it's, you know, it's going to waste your time if you put in 3 months worth of work and it takes 9 to start seeing traction. So SEO worked for us a lot. It changes all the time, so you have to be on the ball. But that's not all we did. We did other things. So we outsourced, you know, I was quoted in a lot of publications. I called a lot of people that were specializing in the self-directed IRA area. I realized that one of my avatars does not need me, right? So they're do-it-yourselfers. So I came up with a digital product that would address their needs, because even though they were do-it-yourselfers and they didn't need me, they would still call me. Like, hey, I have a question. Okay, are you gonna, you know, like, I'm happy to help people for free. Like, I don't want them making bad decisions, but it was like, this is too much. So we created a digital product and we just sent them there. Say, here, buy it. You know, do it yourself. I don't care. You know, here's the research you need and go do it yourself. So we've spent time like understanding the audience and addressing different needs and solving some of our problems, like, you know, time wasters. But, you know, there are a lot of different strategies that worked, but addressing people in the industry who are experts in this area, like accountants, attorneys, custodians, like people who specialize, and just connecting with them. I've gotten so many calls from realtors who I've never met, who have a client who says, hey, I want to use my IRA, and they're like, I don't know how to do this, and they look me up online, they're like, oh, great, call Kirk. And they're like, hey, yes, Tony said to call you. I'm like, who's Tony? I don't know Tony. You know, and they're like, oh yeah, he recommended you. He said he knows you. I'm like, oh yeah, Tony, yeah, I know him. Like, I get those calls all the time because I'm the only one doing it.
Sure.
And I realized there are so many of these niches around. I found 10 that I want to pursue, that given enough time, and these are just, I don't want more than 10. There's probably a 50 or 60 out there that are untouched by probably more than one advisor in the whole industry. So it's a matter of figuring out what you want, where the need is, and trying to fill that need, right? Entrepreneurs, the job of an entrepreneur is find a need and fill it. You know, what most people do is they say, hey, I have this product and you're going to buy it. No, that's the opposite of what you should do. No one wants to buy your product. The only way they're going to buy it is if the need is already there and you happen to have it. There's I listened to a podcast a while back, and this well-known podcaster made this point. He's like, look, I built this terrific app. It was the best app in the world, and no one wanted it because I never bothered to ask people if they wanted it. And so he wasted his time and his money, and it was expensive. And then he realized, like, crap, I need to interview my audience, understand what they want, and then build that product that they want. And that is a huge error that people make when marketing, is they just think, oh, everyone loves me and they love my product. No, they don't. They don't care about you. They don't care about your product. You know, if you find a group that does, great, address that group. But, you know, don't talk to your neighbor about some crazy strategy if your neighbor is just paying the bills. Like, just, you know, you can't be tone deaf.
Great book on that topic, Nail It Then Scale It. I've been listening to it, but it's that exact concept. I do business coaching and have for 15 years in addition to video marketing, but that's one of the biggest issues I've always seen people have. They fall in love with their product, their service, which is great, and then they try to back channel who's supposed to fill it out. It's always way easier to start interviewing whoever that potential customer is, really listen to them before you start creating the solution. And even when you start creating the solution, don't give it all the bells and whistles. Do it one aspect at a time and build it out slowly, which is more difficult, more patience, but is totally worth it. And speaking of which, going back to wrap things up here, where I've kept you for quite a bit of time. You talking about marketing consistently and doing things over the long haul. A quick personal wrap up here. I know that you're big into trying to watch what you eat a little bit, and I've heard you on other podcasts talking about how important sleep is. So kind of bring us home a little bit here, if you don't mind, in terms of what you do on that personal side, in terms of personal development and what goes in your body. And
that's a good point. I don't talk about this enough.
Kind of feed yourself that way.
I do a lot of leadership training for advisors and accountants and attorneys, and the service industry has some certain challenges, one of which is we're all commoditized. We're all the same. Clients can't tell the difference. So one of the things that I've done, I did this a few years ago, is before COVID, and what I realized was, if I want to make big changes, and this will bring in a bunch of different concepts, if I want to make a change to my life, I need to start big. Because if I want a small change, what do they say? If you want to hit the moon, shoot for the stars, right? You're not always going to hit your goal. Goals are not for achieving. Right. They're for direction. So, I realized that I needed to take a goal and make it well beyond my personal comfort zone. And, I think at the time I had like 20 million in assets under management, or 30 million. And I was like, I'm going to have a $2 billion under management in 5 years. That was my goal. And you're thinking, like, you're a jerk. Like, that's arrogant. It's not the point. I didn't go around advertising this. I tell you guys because it's helpful to contextualize what I did. And my goal was, I said, all right, I want to accomplish this. What do I need to do to accomplish it? So I deconstructed my whole life and said, what do I need to do this in 5 years? It's possible. I just had to double my assets every single year for 5 years. So that's not easy. Maybe at the beginning, right? Maybe you get lucky and you double it in a year, but once you get to year 4, that's not easy, right? You're not going to go from 1 billion to 2 billion in a year. That's not easy. But that's not the point. The point was to get me out of my comfort zone mentally. So I started to look at every aspect of my business. If I want to do this, what does my business look like in 5 years? Who am I employing? What am I doing? What am I doing now that I have to change to do differently? So I thought about what that actually looks like, and I deconstructed every part. So I put myself mentally in that space. I'm like, all right, I'm running a business. I've got a bunch of employees. All right, if I have $2 billion, I probably have X amount of clients. The average asset is Y. How much time do I spend on each one? Okay, well, I can't. If I have 1,000 clients, I can't do that. So that means I've probably got, these other people I have to employ. So I worked backwards. I started in year 5, then went to year 4, 3, 2, 1. And then from there, I worked backwards from there and said, what am I doing each quarter? What am I doing each month, each week? So I worked backwards from the end goal to today and thought, all right, basically I have to double my assets every year. That's not easy. Okay, so what do I have to do that? And so I just started to tear apart my whole life. And I realized like this is going to put a burden on my personal life. So I think a lot of people think that most people think that, oh, I can do everything. You can't. You always have to give something up. And the question is, what are you willing to give up? Are you willing to give up time with your family? Are you willing to give up your health, your sleep? Are you willing to give up eating well, going on vacations? Like, you can't do everything, right? You have to give something up. And you need to understand what's meaningful. So I'll give you an example. At the time, my kids are really small. And I realized, I have boys, and I realized I need to be a big part of their life at a certain age. And when they're younger, I said, I'm going to give up time with them at a younger age so that I can spend a lot more time with them at an older age. And now I can spend a lot more time with them when they need me. Whereas when they were really young, it was like, I missed that time, but a lot of people can't spend time with their kids. I get to spend all day with them if I want, right? Because I built that into my planning and realized that this is the one thing that I have to give up in order to accomplish this other thing. But this other thing gives me what I really want, which is having a huge impact on their life at an age where they really need that. So, you don't just wake up one day and say, oh, I really want to do X. Like, you have to plan this out. So, when I worked backwards, and this gets into the health stuff and the stuff you're talking about, a lot of the big changes that I made were in my own head. They're mindset based, right? Like, we all think like, oh, we just need willpower and we need these things. It's about thinking differently. It's about looking at a problem and saying, how can I think differently about this problem? Because my whole career was, I'm a solo guy. I do it myself. I don't have partners. Even when I had a partner, we had our own silos. We did our own things. And like, I just did things a certain way. And I realized like, I can't do it that way anymore. I need to get out of my comfort zone. So, a lot of what was needed was I needed to work extra hard. I mean, I worked from pretty much 8 in the morning until 8 at night for years. And, I definitely took time to do things I needed to, but like, I just pushed myself. But in order to do that, you can't do that consistently over and over without, burning yourself out. So you need to, the way I think of the framework from everybody, this is for everybody. The framework is this. There are certain elemental building blocks that every single person has. And most people think that they need more time in their lives. I would say it's not a matter of time, it's a matter of priorities. Elon Musk has as much time as I do and as much as you do. But he's a lot more productive than all of us combined, right? He is a master at being productive. So he's taken priorities. His priorities are certain things, and he's mastered that, right? Better than anyone else, because he's one of the richest guys in the world. So he's really good at that. Now, part of that comes down to, it's not a matter of time, it's a matter of energy. So we're all trying to manage our time throughout the day. But what we really need to do is manage our energy. So to have enough energy, the first building block is sleep. You need to get enough sleep. If you don't get enough sleep, you're not going to have enough energy to do anything else. And your brain is not going to work properly. You're going to be just, plugging through the day, but your brain is not going to be optimal. So you get enough sleep, it gives you that energy, it gives you willpower to do other things. Okay. The next one you need to have is you need to eat the right food. A lot of us eat junk food. I've had food issues my whole life, so this hasn't been a problem because I've been forced to. But if you eat junk food, it's going to negatively affect your life. You need to eat well. You need to eat the right food. You need to give yourself energy to do everything else. Once you have the right food and giving you the energy you need, then you need to exercise. You need to work out. Working out will give you more energy. So all of these things are, they're one after the other. They build on each other, right? You sleep enough, it gives you energy. It gives you enough energy to eat right. You eat right, it gives you enough energy to work out. You work out, it gives you enough energy to do everything else in your day. So those three things plus drinking enough water, which is really important. I think people don't do that enough. But those four things are the building blocks for everyone's success. If you do those 4 things right and well, you will have enough energy to do all of the things that you want to do. Now, there's more to it, but that's a big starting point, because every single time I work with another professional, like an accountant or attorney, and they're like, "Oh, I'm struggling," I'm like, "You got to start here. This is where you have to start." And I know it's terrible, and I know people are like, "Oh, I know I got to eat right, and well, I got to have that Doritos." I get it, but it's like, what's important to you? If you want to make a change, you can't make a change. Is hard. Change is one of the hardest things that we do as human beings. We're not built for change. We're built for habits. We all have habits, good habits and bad habits, right? And they're there for a reason. But we are habit machines. So if you want to change, you need to change your habits. And changing habits is hard. So if you don't have the energy or the willpower to change the habits, it's not going to happen. So if you get those things right, then after that, then you can put on then you can figure out what are all these other habits that I need to change. And there's a lot of them, probably more time than the show, but this is going to be the driving engine of that change.
Kirk, that is, man, we'll do this again some point, and we'll just focus in on the leadership stuff, and that gets me fired up and lets me know that I'm doing some things right and have other things to continue to improve on. But that's applicable to virtually any industry and anybody, not just wealth advisors. But dude, that's awesome. Tell everybody how, if it's okay, how do they find you?
You can find me at innovativewealth.com. That's our independent RIA. Pretty much I've written everything there. So if you want to learn more about me, just read anything. You'll understand who I am. I also do a weekly podcast called Money Tree Investing, and that's moneytreepodcast.com. And every week we have a show. We have a different guests and talk more about the investing and the wealth management aspect of what we do. So if you're more of an audio person, then that's the place to be. Thanks for having me on, Charles.